morning and thank you for joining us. This is Sunrise and I am Alero Edu.
Welcome to our living room and we're also welcome into yours. Thank you very much. Amaya Makine, good morning and welcome to the show.
You welcomed yourself into...
They let
sorry.
me in.
I'm sorry.
The TV is on. And into your living room or into your Zaza room where you're watching from.
Oh, God.
Hope you had your cup of cocoa this morning, by the way. I had mine. I don't know what she's had. Or if it's cocoa, somewhere up north or wherever you are. Okay, you can talk.
Are you done? Okay. Now, of all the problems we have in this country, of all the problems, with 133 million people living below the poverty line, all we can think of right now is that we want 31 new states.
Yes. Not local governments, please.
States.
States.
Meanwhile, of the 36 we have now, maybe about a quarter of them are not exactly viable. Without federal allocations, they couldn't survive. Should we be merging states or should we be asking for more states?
I'd have even preferred that we heard something like more local government administrations than states. Because at the end of the day, what's it all about? It's all about resources. It's all about, let's just be honest.
That's why they're pursuing this agenda.
Exactly.
So that they too can go with their caps to Abuja every month, collect their allocations.
The funniest of the lot for me, God forgive me, is Southeast. In fact, I think there are about 2 or 3 requests in the Southeast for Southeast, for states in the Southeast
to be broken up further.
And I'm like, the entire Southeast not reach your state.
I beg, left that matter.
No, it's a fact.
Left that matter.
So, even Oyo State itself, I think is asking for about, is it 3 or 4 states? In fact, one of the states that my people are asking for has 3 names in it. I wonder how it's going to be called. He's like saying, back in the Alero State.
Why not? Why not? My compound will be a state now. You know, that's good.
I think I like the way you put it. Of all the problems we have, the next thing to be talking about is breaking down states further. Let's even evaluate the ones that we have. What have we done? How well have we done? How viable are the ones that we have? This is this is just me. Well, look, Alero, I think the problem you have is you're not a politician. So you don't know how it works.
Obviously. That is kind of obvious, isn't it?
You don't know how it works. You don't know how these things work. The more states we have, the more power we have. And at the end of the day, what does it really come to? Really, what does it come to?
So we have more governors.
We have more
black SUVs.
Yes.
And more people using sirens and throwing us into the gutter when they want to pass.
I think one of the things that we haven't even come to terms with is the fact that asking for more states is how do I put it? It's an admission of failure of the states to not develop what they have.
Told them.
That's the way it sounds to me. It's an admittance that okay, we are not successful at what we are doing, so let's look for more. I don't know. So now there are those, of course, who would also argue that it's not maybe because the states we have now they are not as representative of the people as we want it to be. How about local governments?
Exactly.
How about we've had 770
even if we had only 6 states, there'll be local governments. So go and ask your local government chairman.
I still contend. As I said, I'm an ignoramus, I don't know anything. But I still contend that during the First Republic and the military era that I met as I grew up, the local government administrations were way more functional. Oh yes, they were. During the Fourth Republic, they were also active. Because that's when we had gold service. You remember gold service? Akpakpa local government had these gold service vehicles that plied the mainland to island. It was the first air-conditioned public transport system.
Really?
Yes. No, those of us who they work out for on foot, we know. At the Keja bus stop, they would. As far as some of the buses around, even though there's anything but air conditioning in them. And guess what that did? It made other local government administrations in Lagos to develop, to come up with the same initiatives.
See?
They were competitive among themselves. Can we do that for a
see?
change?
You see?
I still hear that Alimosho is almost as big, if not not bigger, almost as big, if not bigger, or as populated, if not more populous than some states in Nigeria. So how about we break down the local?
I can believe that.
How about we break down local governments first, as opposed to breaking states?
Yeah.
And then we have more people who will be administrators of those things, and then the people can hold those ones responsible.
And we can hold our local governments more accountable.
Anyway,
because they are the ones who relate directly with us.
As I said,
what do we know?
I'm just a bloody presenter.
I'm just a
bloody presenter.
Thank you very much.
Say, what do I know? I'm just a bloody comedian.
Yeah. Now, I saw the DG of NAFDAC calling for the death penalty for drug peddlers and drug fakers. I think that was yesterday or 2 days ago.
I won't be surprised if the DG of NDLEA is on the same page. I won't be surprised.
Wow. Well, she was asking them to all please join her in this campaign that anybody who is peddling drugs or faking drugs that end up killing people himself deserves the death penalty.
I think the things that you're bringing up this morning, Alero, is you're just asking us
an eye for an eye.
I think you are just asking us to question whether or not we have been successful, or we should admit that we have failed.
In the area of
even including this matter, these illicit drugs, do they fall from the sky like manna? Oh, they fall from the sky
like rain.
So they didn't come through the borders. Okay.
Speaking about who, did you see the guy who swallowed and couldn't get one of them out?
So now they had to spend state resources
to do surgery on him.
And then after that he's healed, you now take him to court again. Anyway, now the point is that I'm making about that is, at the end of the day, they came in through the borders. Okay.
So, who is allowing them through the borders?
That's the first question we should be asking. Who allowed them to come in? I heard something very, very unpalatable with about the EFCC yesterday. I haven't confirmed it. When I confirm, I'll know. That, how did they get in? Some people have been saying for a while that, our borders are porous, this one, that one, communities and all. Are we engaging them? It was in the course of this week, or was it last week, that we had the chairman of the Enugu State Security Trust Fund. And it was when I asked him about, look, how do you fence off your borders so that security that you guys have achieved is not compromised from neighboring states like that are around you, like from Benue, from Anambra and all that. He said they have relationships and contacts with the local communities, the community development associations, the local government administrations, so that before you even come in fact, that there was a time someone kidnapped somebody in Enugu State. I was going to go across the border. It was the people in the community that stopped the fellow. Now, how do those things get in? We haven't engaged the local communities enough, in my book, in my opinion. Because if we had, I don't think the DG of NAFDAC would even notice them to get to that point. Some people will come into this country with tanker loads of illicit drugs, and they how did they slip through?
And somehow they get through.
And you remember that time that some security operatives, I think it was customs also, went to a hotel in Abuja saying they want to lock down the people who brought in cars. And I'm like,
how did the cars get here in the first place?
They fly in. Anyway, what else are you?
Quickly before we go to the menu. Professor jailed 3 years for declaring false electoral results.
Okay. Yeah.
Yes. You don't have anything to say about that?
The one that I have on this is he did he come through Nigeria's education system?
I don't know.
Okay.
But he's a professor.
No. Yorubas will say What did he put in? He said that doesn't want to bring down. Anyway, let him go through his. I think this is another one. There was one initially that I think was championed by Mike Guinea to ensure that when someone declared false results like that and all of that. Another one that
I think this one that we heard about 3 days ago is the second. One is already in prison apparently.
We should have more of them.
Yes.
The more you do these things, so that you know that we people we have risen up. We must talk about this one before we go.
I mean, aren't those people supposed to be of high moral standing?
Maybe in the 80s. Because in the 80s,
are they not?
In the 80s, they were the ones that.
Is that why is that not why they're the ones being selected to do this job?
But you can just.
And then you find that they are like the tout. Only God knows how much he was given to compromise himself, his family name, his generations who bear that name to bring them into this kind of disrepute. Not as if family name matters to anybody in Nigeria anymore.
Oh, no, it does. It does. To some of us.
When I was little, remember the name that you bear. Remember whose child you are.
Yeah.
That was drummed into us when we were little kids.
No, you couldn't even ignore it in some certain communities. It's right there in the center of town.
I mean, you humiliate your family, the whole community ostracizes you and your family. They don't deserve to live among us.
And now he's gone for 3 years. Anyway, let's just hope that the
professor.
children... No, I beg. There is no half professor. But we have to talk about this 6334 thing.
We'll talk about it in the course of today's program. Yes, it's on the menu. Yes, the first topic we're going to deal with this morning.
Sorry, before you go. Lagos State government. There's this new thing now. E-police. Speed limits.
E-police.
E-police.
Yes.
Speed limits.
Okay.
In certain areas.
Okay.
If you do above 60 kilometers per hour, you're caught. Do above 80 kilometers per hour, you're caught.
Watch out. Watch out. So, fight against corruption. That's the first one we're going to deal with this morning.
That fight is onward. And then there is this. Yes, that's my topic. The 12-year basic education model.
Lifestyle, mental stability in times of crisis.
We need it too.
Because we're going through a crisis right now. No food, no petrol, no water, no light, band-aid.
Oh God. School fees, house rent. And then we'll close as usual with Alera's favorite, the artist of the week, who today is
Ehi.
Ehi. That's the name.
Ehi.
Oh.
A, letter A, then H-E. H-E. He. Thank you very much.
When you hear H-E like that, it's His Excellency. Just saying. So please.
We'll be right back to start the program in earnest.
Rise up and take it command. We they see them, we know they blind.
One day our Niger go good, and one of the reasons why our Niger is not good is because there is so much corruption. And we've been talking about the fight against corruption forever. How well are we doing in this fight? Last week, it was reported that the chairman of the EFCC, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ola Olukoyede, said that Nigerians condemn corruption, yet rally behind corrupt leaders when they are being prosecuted. Well, if he's my brother, if he's my uncle, if he's my cousin, I'm likely to rally around him. Abi? One of the chairman.
Some people also say that it takes a thief to know a thief.
It takes a thief to know a thief.
In fact, there's a Yoruba proverb that it is only a thief that can trace the path of another thief on the rock.
I've heard that saying
know what that
before.
means?
Yes, you don't leave footprints on a rock.
But
if you are a thief, and you are following a thief, you will know exactly where to put your footsteps on the rock.
How you know how the thief waka? In fact, we had someone come on air before the elections. I think it was I'm not sure which one. He said, look, the best kind of president we should have is someone who has been accused of corruption. He said, why? He said, hey, that person knows how it is done.
So he will know how to catch the ones who are doing it. Okay, now let's discuss this with a panel of legal minds, both of them. One is a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Dapo Akinyosun. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you again. And the other is our old friend who ran away, but thankfully he's back now, Mr. John Oloyede.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us.
He's a he.
I'm a he.
Not and
Proudly so.
Not His Excellency.
Not His Excellency.
No, not His
Not
Excellency.
yet.
Just a he.
Yes. So, Mr. Akinyosun, this our fight has been going on forever. How well do you think we're doing in this fight?
I think the fight has been on a little while before I was born.
Wow.
And we don't seem to have been able to conquer it successfully. Because every opportunity, everyone that comes on board sees it as my own turn. This is our opportunity. Unfortunately, the morals around it or our ethics also seem to be dropping. People do no longer find it difficult to know the difference between what is right and what is wrong. Such that when you get the opportunity to dip into public, and not only public tea, let us be honest, even in the private sector, you employ people and all they're looking at is how to make a quick extra bucks off you. So while we condemn it in public space, are we faring much better in the private sector as well?
We'll come to that, sir. And it's a very, very important one because to a good number of times, public sector officials are drawn from the private sector because of how well or not they have done. Well, let me ask you, Mr. Oloyede, the instruments of state to fight corruption have also come under intense pressure. I was telling Alero the other time that there are, even within the anti-corruption agencies, I think it was the EFCC chairman at some point that said, look, we've had to terminate the appointment of some of our men because they were also found wanting in certain regard. If the instrument of fighting corruption is corrupted, is the war on?
You want me to say it's a non-starter really, because it's been very sad that, like the other Silk said, this war on corruption started probably before I was born too. I mean, we've read here and there the politicians of yore, those who held sway in the big parties of that time, they had to face serious cases in court. Some were convicted and all that. And over time, during the military era, the different ones in power, they started what they call, you remember, war against indiscipline, kick against indiscipline. All those were attempts at curtailing corruption in public and private sector. Now, unfortunately, you cannot give what you don't have. The Nigerian society is such that we attract Nigerians into all these institutions. In trying to institutionalize the anti-corruption war, the pool of human resource available are Nigerians like you and I. And as has been said this morning, is there anybody above, I mean, in terms of moral standards, can we really say we have a pool from where we can bring in angels who would actually face this battle without any form of restraint. And that is the problem. I mean, recently you heard of some EFCC officials stealing, is it money exhibits, what they called exhibits, I think it was dollars. It was stolen. The gravest injustice to the justice system is to steal exhibits made to prove the guilt of somebody to be charged. So if internally the people that are there are like Nigerians like you and I, can we really expect, I mean, what kind of training, what kind of upbringing have they had that is different from the ones that the politicians have? One of the things that people talk about is you can only have the kind of leadership that you deserve. In Nigeria today, the political class is made up of people who come from amongst us. They're just waiting for their time. When it is their turn, they then.
But what do you think is responsible for that? Because one would expect that before you apply for that job, it's the people's interest that should be on the mind. Where did it come from? I know it is human to want what you want first before anyone else, but let's first of all talk about where do you think it started from?
Now let me share a personal discussion I had with somebody who applied to join the Nigerian police. And I said, why police of all things? And he told me that, well, he wants to seize an opportunity to make money. I mean, this is somebody known. I said, make money how from police? What kind of money are you? You are going to be on salary. Egmont, all those things that are going on. I want to be a part of it. That is the police, law enforcement agent. Now, a lot of officers of EFCC, they come from the Nigerian police. A lot of people are recruited from outside. Now, they are young people. They see people who make money fraudulently without consequences. Now, they go in there. One of the major reasons why EFCC, cannot sustain most of the charges is not because the judge is not ready to dispense justice. It's not because the evidence is not there. But like in the case of there was a judge in one of I think Delta State, where a former governor had to build a court premises where he will be tried. Now, and 170 charges were profiled against him, and none could be sustained. The case, the whole charge sheet was dismissed in limine because it could not be sustained. It was not because there was no evidence, because about 2 years later, the same person who absconded from Nigeria because of the hula baloo generated, he went to Dubai, and then the EFCC, when EFCC was EFCC, worked with the UK government, and in less than 1 year, he was convicted, right, of virtually the same, but in Nigeria, it could not become. What happened? On channels, there was a program I featured on, and it was discovered that it wasn't because the judge was corrupt, but it's garbage in, garbage out. The legal officer who drafted the charge sheet, who has been corrected, who dipped his palm in the jar. It's so easy for somebody drafting charges to deliberately omit very fundamental points that should be in the charge. And then when you present it to the judge, and the judge looks at it, that this charge as crafted cannot be sustained. It was thrown out. So it's garbage in, garbage out. So a lot of the problem comes from the staffing.
Mr. Kyoshi, again, back to history. Yeah, corruption has been on since way before both of you were born.
Exactly. And you too.
What will I now see?
Well, you're much older than we are.
I remember, and I'm still looking for that passage, a speech delivered by Chief Obafemi Awolowo. It was in the UK, talking to Nigerian students in 1959. And he was saying in that speech, in that address to Nigerian students, that look, your politicians prefer imported stuff. in Nigeria, not in the UK, in Nigeria, that they preferred imported stuff. So if we are looking for history, we should probably begin from values. What do you think?
Yeah, and that is why I said we need to go back to the foundations. Because first of all, as I think someone mentioned earlier, when we were younger and you are going to school, your parents will tell you, remember the child of who you are. Don't go and embarrass our name outside. Today, you find parents who are arranging scores for their children, writing JAMB exams and paying bribes for their children to go forward in school. Can that kind of parent tell the child, remember the child of who you are? If the ethics are broken down from the home front, we have a fundamental challenge. I went to a Catholic secondary school. They taught what was called moral instructions then, in which it was instilled in us the sense of what is right and what is wrong. Today, it has been cancelled from curricula of many schools. So until the foundation is set right, we cannot build on nothing, like the lawyers say.
On that same issue, sir, some of the politicians who are in leadership today went through moral instruction.
Yes, so that takes us to the next level, where there's no consequence for bad behavior. They will behave badly.
Okay.
How do you ensure, how do you enforce judgments? How do you enforce that a man who steals ultimately goes to prison? John spoke about drafting of charges. Sometimes the lawyers who are drafting these charges are under pressure for time. They have seen this man, he has committed a crime. They're trying to get the drafts and the charges right. But the corrupt person is going to employ the best lawyers to come and defend him. Sure. These lawyers are going to raise every technical objection and defense to getting justice. Yeah. Where they see that it is a watertight case, they will delay and hope that either the judge goes or the administration goes or something changes. And until we begin to sanction ourselves, some judges make some orders that are outrageous, but a lawyer drafted the judge will not make an order out of the blues. A lawyer has taken an application before him by whatever means. I know the NBA is trying to discipline erring lawyers, but I don't think we're looking deep enough into dealing with those issues that bring about the bad judgment. The delays in justice are often caused by lawyers as well.
Yes.
A lot of it, the laws are there, and no matter how good the laws are, until it is properly enforced, moral upbringing, ethics, consequence for bad behavior are things that we need to look at. Welfare of also these guys who are implementing. The people, as I said, in the anti-corruption agencies are not ghosts. They come from the society. They face the same pressures we face. So as inflation is affecting everybody, are they adjusting their income to levels that bribes remain uninteresting to them? But if they have to pay school fees of 1 million and they cannot find it when they need it, and there's this guy who is charged and is putting them under pressure using, I know of a judge who said to me when she was going to write a judgment on a matter that the other side got the king of her husband's village to come and speak to her at home about getting this judgment right. When the king of your husband's village comes to meet you at home, it's going to, if you don't listen to your husband,
hands become tight.
So it becomes tight. And of course, in that situation, she was able to tell me because she did what was right. But it caused problem between herself and her husband. But he was choosing what is right and what is wrong. So how many of us are able to stay the course is the most important thing. Until we get to that level where we are satisfied with what we have.
Mr. Loyede,
Yes.
let us consider this. He has spoken about values. Then there is also the Nigerian system. How do we expect any human being in today's Nigeria to survive on 70,000 naira a month? One. Two, people work for 35 years or whatever number of years. They do not get their pensions for years and years to come. Even when they do, the pensions are a pittance, not enough to make them survive the conditions of the Nigeria in which they find themselves at that particular time. So, my question therefore is our system not skewed to encourage corruption when people are not taken care of? When a person goes to pay school fees for his 4 generations ahead, because he foresees that inflation would have eaten so much into the system, should the government not be putting things in place to make sure that even when you retire, you earn enough to make a living or to live a life and not be dependent on the children or on stolen funds?
Very good question. Because this issue arose from a discussion I had yesterday with somebody who works at the Court of Appeal. And I was asking about a matter I'm involved in. And I said, look, this matter has been hanging for so long. He said, Oga, please, no, I'm not in the mood to discuss anybody's case because we have not been paid the January salary.
Oh dear.
And I said, you have not been paid your January salary. He said, nobody has been paid at the Court of Appeal. Oh, what's the reason? Yes, they've not received the allocation for the payment. They are trying to reconcile the backlog. Some arrears were outstanding, carry over from last year. And they've been agitating that, oh, we should be paid these arrears and all that. And there's no money to pay it. And I said, so what's going on? He said, well, they've served some notice and that, 1 week more, they will go on strike. And I had to tell her that, you see, the problem with the Nigerian society is this strike you people are proposing is not going to hold, because the leadership of the JUSUM, your union, a day or the night before the strike is supposed to start, will call it off. And you know why. Now, and I told them, I said, the political class cannot function either positively or negatively. I mean, they can't positively or negatively impact the Nigerian society without the support of the court system. Because most of the things they get away with, they find a way to distill it through the court system. All sorts of applications are filed to prevent people from going on strike, to prevent people from agitating and all that. And there's a way the court allows it to pass through. And I said, if the court workers can actually stay off work for 1 month, the political class will bow. Because without it, I mean, so many lawyers now, most of the cases that get heard that are decided, they are political cases. A lot of other cases are hanging. They can't get heard. So now, that is to underscore the point I want to make, that the Nigerian system is corruption prone. Everything about it. How can you work and not get paid?
Yeah.
I'm not even talking of those who have retired now. Now, I have a very good friend, my classmate Ujumu. His father was a top-ranking civil servant, public servant, years back when we were children.
Yeah.
And he had very glowing memories about, life as the son of a senior civil servant. They would go home, career civil servant, life was good. You drive either your Volkswagen or your Peugeot, you are a big man. You lived in Ikoyi, things were okay. Yeah. Now, the beginning of the Nigerian problem, corruption, how the civil service became the flagship of corruption in Nigeria, was when, he said, according to him, and I agree with him, was when the military came in and suddenly there was a sweeping, they sacked everybody. Yeah. Now, these people were not prepared for life. They were still eligible by the civil service rules to be in service. Then they all got sacked. And after they got sacked, a lot of them died because they did not prepare for it. there was nothing they kept, aside for that period. And then those that were left decided, without having a meeting, that no, this cannot happen to us.
If they're going to sack me like this,
I must be ready. And then they decided that, and today, when the politicians come on board, there is nothing they can do without the collusion of civil servants.
And that, no, it's not just civil servants. Femi Festus Akimboyewa is saying, no large-scale corruption, this one is from X, no large-scale corruption can succeed without the involvement of bankers, lawyers, accountants, estate agents,
lawyers,
and black market currency traders. Decisive and speedy trial and punishment of those involved in corruption and other heinous financial crime will go a long way in checking the menace. Go on.
I don't know the bias of the person, but he omitted religious institutions.
Okay.
Why that? Yes, okay. We all know what's going on.
But there's something he said, and I'll bring that to you, Mr. Kyoshun. Emmanuel Daudu wrote in from Ikeja, says, the propensity for corruption in Nigeria is fueled by a lack of punitive punishment, something you said earlier, that would act as deterrents to would-be corrupt officials. Maybe we should learn from the Chinese on how to frontally fight corruption. I don't know how the Chinese do. You know how the Chinese
I heard the rumor
about the death penalty, right? I heard it too.
I heard that rumor.
Yes, I heard it.
And how effective the death penalty is or will be is also very subjective.
Let's even try whether it succeeded under the military, because during the military era, if you are caught as an armed robber, Yoruba say they put your back to the
drum. Lagoon.
To the drum.
Okay,
put your back to the
okay, yes,
that's Agba.
That's the drum.
Put your put the back to the barrel, tie him. It was execution. Did it work at the time?
Well, it had its own value, and we cannot dispense of it, because it created a fear. The embarrassment to the families that were involved in seeing your child tied to the stake had its own values. And even in China, where it operates, you cannot, and it's not only China, there are a few other countries that do the death
Japan
penalty
as well.
It is not totally worthless, but of course, in a system where the whole value chain up the train is a bit corrupted, you find wrong people being sentenced. I mean, there was the case of the drug peddlers who are convicted and executed in Nigeria. I think that was under Babangida. The story still remains that some of them claim to have been innocent. So you always find wrong people killed sometimes. And until you have a judicial system that works well, then it may be difficult to get it effectively. I also have my own argument about giving life sentences to people who have stolen and will be fed on government money for the rest of their lives. Why don't you just kill them and save government money? Why use my taxpayers' money to continue to maintain them and let them corrupt other people who come into prison? So there's no one size, one cap fits all. But we must begin to do the right things first. We start from paying the right fees for the right job. If you pay peanuts, you will get monkeys. If you pretend to pay people a living wage, they will also pretend to come to work, because they cannot work and exist on that level. So they have to find alternative means. But as happened in Lagos State some years ago, I know a judge who retired. When he was in service, he was living in Ikoyi, official accommodation. When he retired, he moved to a boys' quarters of a friend in Folago.
Wow.
Because he had no home of his own. So when there's no security, as has been mentioned, your pension is not sure to come. And I wonder about those guys in the pension office. Do they forget that they would also one day retire and face the same issues? But that is why they steal so much and try and impoverish every other person. But until we have a situation where you are sure that even after I retire, I will live a reasonable life if I have worked diligently. you would always have this issue.
Well, you have some mails to look at. This one is
do we
from...
have any more?
Yes, this one is from Egbele Amos Tom, who says,
Okay.
the logicality and evidentiality of the law, you guys will understand this because I have no idea, is the tripod on which justice is laid. The law and justice does not rely on emotionalism nor the perception of the people. That is probably more of the reasons we tend to think the war against corruption can never be won. Do you agree with him?
I mean, Nigeria now, in perspective, I don't really agree with that. What she's trying to say is that, well, you know, the way you prove an offense in court is not the same way we talk about it in beer parlors. That, okay, the average Nigerian will say, oh, see, he's a thief, that one is a thief. Everybody is a thief. But until you can discharge the evidential burden placed on you by law that that person is actually a thief, then there is nothing to eat. But you see, the Nigerian person, the perception of ICPC, EFCC, Code of Conduct Bureau, and all that, you see, belies what she is saying about logicality. You see a situation, one of the reasons, what lawyers have over the average Nigerian on the street is that we practice our profession knowing full well in advance that, look, there is some form of certainty in the law. If 1 + 1, if you bring 1 + 1, it's supposed to be 2. It's never going to be 3 in court. Now, what we work with is called judicial precedents. There are a lot of decisions that have been given by the courts. And these decisions, they should guide a lawyer. They should guide the FCC lawyers. They should guide everybody in presenting their respective cases in court. But there are situations where Nigerian courts, lately, I mean, when I started practice, it was over 30 years ago, you were almost certain from your chambers, I say this every day, of the case you are going to win and the case you are going to lose. So you don't just present cases. But these days, you have a situation where cases are presented, and I mean, let's talk about EFCC, since we're talking about corruption. You have situations where in this country, cases have been presented, they are ongoing, either EFCC or ICPC. And then a new minister, Attorney General of the Federation, comes in. Because he has the power of the nollie, he comes in and he says, I'm entering a nollie prosequi, meaning I'm stopping the progress of this matter. Now, somebody else had been charged with the same offense, based on the same set, almost the same set of facts, and he is convicted. I mean, and then this particular one, the man at the topmost level of the judicial system said, no, stop prosecution. And that's probably because, and then the man comes out and he joins the party in power. Now, there's no logicality to that. There is corruption. And that's what Nigerians see every day. And that's why they have trust issues dealing with these anti-corruption agencies. It's a big problem. There should be some form of certainty. When you bring A on the same set of facts and you convict him, B should be convicted. But politically exposed persons, they get away with blue murder.
Yes.
And that's what Nigerians complain about.
Okay. Well, Etubom Essien says, kudos to your panel on fight against corruption. I should remind you, though, that applicants for employment into EFCC, into the police, into customs, and so on, pay heavily to be employed. Like politicians, what would stop them from corruptly enriching themselves?
Good question.
Well, I cannot speak for all the agencies, but I know that it would be unfair to paint all of them and say they all are bribed to get employment there. I know of EFCC that you have to be a certain age, first of all, to be employed. They take young people, fresh minds who can be trained and adequately modified or indoctrinated from the time they're young. And anyway, once someone gets into a system, and you can see a lot of money moving hands, I was involved in a governorship tussle at a time, and the aspirant called me and said, I don't have money to pay your fees now, but when I become governor, I will be able to pay everything. What you are fighting for now is the emancipation of our people. Once you fight this battle, so I said, wait a minute. What you're saying is that when you don't have the money to pay my fees now, but when you become governor, you will use government money to pay my fees. At that point, we had a disagreement, but it took a little discussion in our office because some of us did not understand why you would say no. What we're doing is that we're investing in this man. I say, no, we're not investing in this man. This man is planning to go into government to steal and use that money. We're his personal lawyers. We're not government lawyers. So he cannot be using government money to pay us for his personal
case. What do you care where the money comes from?
That was the problem we had in the office then. And that was why I said about the way some of his ethics are taught. Some just did not understand that, no, he's paying us when he's able to pay.
Well, you know, my apologies, sir. Still on this same matter. I mean, you can't speak for all the lawyers, all the agencies. But perception, in some sense, is reality for some people. That is why I think is it Amnesty International, they are not checking Nigeria's corruption index. They're checking corruption perception index. I'll give you an instance. Just yesterday, someone was speaking with me and he was saying, look, that he knows of some people, of some that some agency, let me not mention any particular, some anti-corruption agency in this country, in a particular state, say the head of the agency in the state needed some money, and so tell your guy to go and bring some money. Now, why is that coming up? Because they have a case against that particular individual or organization that has not been finalized. There is no strong case, but there is a threat, and they want to leverage that threat. If indeed it is true that that state agent sends a decoy or someone to go ask for such things, you can't blame this gentleman for saying what he said. It's as far as they're concerned, it is perception. There are those who would rather jump into the hands of a thief or a robber than go to the police. That is the case of some people in, I think, somewhere in the north. They would rather have these, is it Talakawas or what they called them at the time? Some terrorist organization. That they would rather have these people protect them than official security agencies. So these things are our realities. Unfortunate as they are our realities.
Yeah. And you cannot argue with the reality or even the perception, which took me first of all to foundations when I started. I remember when I graduated from university, I wanted to join the customs because I believed that all my father's friends and contemporaries then who worked in customs were rich men. So I wanted to join customs. I liked the uniform forces, but among the uniform forces, customs was attractive because they were also rich. And my father said to me, no, you cannot go and join them. I said, why? He said, if you don't become corrupt, you'll be an obstruction to people who are corrupt. That if you can't beat them, they will force you to join them. I was sad, but that was the reason he gave then that I could not join. And from then I realized that you have to either be different from them or separate yourself. If this perception is real, and the truth is that people would always make those allusions, and there's truth in it. I'm not saying there's no truth in it, but those who are also paying for it, do they not have a part to blame? It's okay if there's a collector, if there's nobody who's willing to pay, it won't happen.
There'll be no taker.
I was one of those people who was unwilling to pay the price to join the customs at that time. But if there are people who are even willing to put down money to join so that they can recoup their investment later,
yes,
it is because there's no sanction or no punishment for bad behavior. But if you cannot explain the source of your wealth and you know that the agencies will catch up with you and you will go to jail, then people will not
you will sit up.
be paying to go to join those organizations.
Mr. Noede,
Yes.
we are in an age of technology.
Yeah.
Shouldn't technology be helping us in this fight? And shouldn't it have become more difficult for people to just dip their hand in the till and just take whatever they want? I mean, look at the case of the accountant general who was reported to have stolen 189 billion naira. In today's world, where there's computers to take care of everything, how are they still able to do it?
Well, sadly,
It is a computer.
everything Nigerian, we have what we call Nigerian factor. In every situation, this comes into play. You got it right to the extent that when we have NIN, BVN, we have all these things that they told us will prevent corrupt practices, will secure our borders, will prevent these Boko Haram people, that if you have all these things in place. And yet, you have a situation where kidnappers, they still get monies transferred through technology. The monies go round and round, and they even take pictures ultimately when they get the cash.
Yes.
And they throw it at us. They throw it in our faces to see. That is the Nigerian factor. In courts, instead of relying on forensic auditing, you have a situation where people, the EFCC, I'm talking of EFCC, they complain about funding, but I know there are donor agencies that support their business. And you have a situation in court, like the Learned Silk said, you have the EFCC comes to court with lawyers, and the lawyers are coming with bag loads of papers to prove a particular case. All that you need to prove the case is forensics. Somebody just comes in, brings his laptop, puts it on the screen to show the movement of money all over the world. When you push $1 million from Nigeria, you can actually know where it ends up in.
Yeah.
And the EFCC lawyer in court will have to come and bring start, and by the time they bring, there is no way. It's so easy. There's no way you can bring all those bus loads of papers that a very brilliant, smart, well-paid lawyer will not find errors on some pages. Page 1 will contradict page 10 because it's manually done. But these are things that are on computers here and there, so long as it passes through the banks, But unfortunately in Nigeria, the system, it's wired to aid corruption. And don't forget that, you see, the people that are involved in this high caliber corruption, they are not, they have the funds. They can pay anybody. They can compromise any systems.
And they say that everyone has a price.
There's always a price tag.
Yeah.
So so a lot of times they blame judges for, this judge, see what you wrote is so porous and all that. I'm not defending anybody, but many a time, some of us in that industry, you will see what a judge has written, and like the one about 170 charges being struck out in limine, and I spoke to a judge who told me that, you went on channels and you were castigating the judge. The judge called me, another judge, and said, you were castigating this judge. Do you know what that judge went through? Have you read the charge sheet? Have you looked at it? And I said, well, I have not seen it. And I came back on channels to tell the Nigerians that, look, I'm sorry. By the time I read the charge sheet, it's shocking.
So even you would have ruled the same way.
Nothing to hold on to.
I would even do worse than the judge, because it was totally bad. So think of it, technology is there to aid us. But really, does EFCC, ICPC, do they have the kind of technology to contend with people who have so much money?
Well, the technology exists.
Yes.
Whether or not they use it is another thing.
Okay.
But let me ask you, you want to read the mail?
Yes. This one is from Olaniyi from Ijesha Tedo. Corruption in Nigeria is something I doubt will ever stop because our society has legalized it indirectly. in our churches
see
and
the law.
mosques today, you will be treated as VIP once you are rich.
Good.
In the family, you become Olori Ebi once you are rich. Even in the family of your spouse. Among friends, you are nobody once you are not rich. Your wife's heart belongs to someone else once you are unable to provide her needs. No one, including our so-called men of God, cares how you get your money before you are accorded with deacon or sheikh. This is why people go to any length to ensure that they are recognized in the society. Also, this country gives people the impression that if you choose to be conscientious and godly, you may end up dying poor.
I don't know, I had no idea this was there. And I was going to ask you about religious leaders. We swear by the Quran I swear by the Bible when I take office. You swear in courts, everything you're going to be saying is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God. And we pledge allegiance to God. Our national anthem ends with the second stanza or the third stanza of the national anthem is "O God of creation." Our national pledge ends with "So help me God." Yet there is corruption.
God helps us to the limits that we're determined to help ourselves. And speaking sincerely, I think the number one person, the person at the helm of affairs determines what goes through the system. If the body language from the top says we will not tolerate this, and they see it going down, it will cascade down very quickly. And I'll give two instances. When Buhari was coming into power, everybody believed that Buhari is a no-nonsense man and will not tolerate. But when they started seeing cases of abuse that was not decisively dealt with, people began to wonder that is this what we asked for? But on the other hand, when Osinbajo was acting president for a period, and he took a decisive step in dealing with the attack on the legislature at that time, everybody wondered what manner of man is this? And you could see everybody shaping up and shipping out and being careful to the point that he never got a chance again to act by whatever means he was done. So what you will find is that if the man at the top says we won't have none of this, everybody will fall in line.
Yeah.
So whether your family celebrates you and you're rich or not, if your family also knows that you'll be shamed for being a thief, the same family will be the ones to turn around against you.
But the reason I'm asking that question, I apologize for butting in, Mr. Akinji, is everyone sits in front of a clergy, listens to a message. In fact, I can't count the number of times that certain clergymen have quote unquote embarrassed public officials sitting right there in front of them and told them stuff. And they would look like, as soon as they lead the place to your tent of Israel.
Well, sometimes it also depends on their perception of that clergyman. The same clergyman who is abusing you publicly will be happy to receive your gifts. But in a situation where the clergy have said, we will not receive your gifts.
Yes.
And the truth is, the gospel also needs money to be funded. And until we get to that point where people are willing to say, I think he speaks a lot of Yoruba. He says, something like that. In your language, that's your language. So you find that.
Okay, Mr. Victor Imoisili says, nothing aids corruption in Nigeria like selective application of the laws of the land. The judiciary and major institutions in Nigeria work only for the rich and politically exposed persons. If we're serious about fighting corruption, our law must apply equally to everyone, regardless of their social status. Your comments, because lawyers are mentioned in this particular mail.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. Now, rule of law. That person has talked specifically about rule of law, and that's a major problem. Something happened in Lagos recently, and it was all over the news that the First Lady prevented the arrest of this man that was impeached or removed in Lagos State. And it was all over the news that, oh, so person was the one who told the FCC, don't touch this person. Now, whether it is true or false, we don't know. But nobody has come out to debunk that particular statement. Now, that is perception. I mean, if the man had a case to answer, why should somebody high up help to prevent his arrest? That's one. Now, rule of law. You have a situation, I had a discussion with a very close friend this week too. We're talking about, I mean, the Lion State knows how difficult it is to attain silk. It's not an easy thing to become a senior advocate of Nigeria. And we're talking about it. And the person called me that he was asking me, Mr. Already, I hope you have submitted your application. I said, I'm not qualified. I don't have enough cases, Supreme Court cases, because my cases have not been heard. I have a case of 2014 that has not been heard till now, 11 years, pending. And he said, Mr. Already, you can't sit down in Lagos and expect that your cases will be heard. That this is how it's done. That you have an appellant, and then there are 5 respondents. And then he was teaching me this. I didn't know it. He's on the bench. He was my junior. He said the 5 respondents, the person who is supposed to lead, instead of appearing for the 5 respondents, would then sell the briefs for, tell you other lawyers to write for the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 5th respondents, so that they too would appear on record to have appeared in that case, just so as they will have enough cases heard to qualify to be a senior advocate of Nigeria. Now, what level? I have my senior who is dead now. We buried him 2 weeks ago. He was always he refused to apply, and I said, "Well, God, why? You?" He said, "You don't apply for honor." And he said, "What happened? That this rule about having this number of cases at the High Court, Court of Appeal, Supreme Court, what happened to why don't you look at lawyers who are so good as trial lawyers? They are so good that when they present their cases, they never lose. Because from their chambers, they don't accept cases that are bad. They first of all take a case that is good, apply the law, and get the judgment. And there are such lawyers, after winning in court, the lawyer on the other side or the other party does not think of appealing. Such lawyers will never have appeal court cases. And yet you say, no, you cannot be sued. Now, I have spoken about this just to tell you that the judicial system, we need a lot of reform, because it is about garbage in, garbage out.
At the end of the day, it's you guys have to sit down around the round table,
We are
flat table or whatever. But you know, there's this message also from Ayode Shorinka from Abeokuta, who says, I appreciate your guests in the house. Thank you. How do we address what played out some time ago, where an official who embezzled pension funds was prosecuted under the penal code with meager punishment, as against the criminal code with a more severe punishment by the prosecuting team, and the man paid the fine from the boot of his car?
Sure.
It took the public outcry for the anti-corruption agency to appeal the case and get a more severe punishment at the appeal court. Is this not a case of systemic weakness for such to happen, when some of those stolen from have died due to lack of finance to cater for their old age health challenges? When we have goat thieves,
Prosecuted.
greatest of all time thieves, prosecuted speedily and with maximum sentence, and economic thieves stealing billions, either being given plea bargain, which allows them to keep part of the loot without going to prison, long prosecution time, or even getting away due to influence on the judicial system. Can this be justice? There's this other one from Sunday Akinyemi. Says, my take on this discussion: corruption in Nigeria and most part of Africa is a lot cultural and not just an emergence. The larger the population, the wider the spread. It's a firm believer that you get wealth, power, or positions for your own benefit, and not for the good of the people. Even when they seem to use such for the people, it is mostly a means to control the people for selfish interest. This had happened too often.
Yeah.
How do you stop a culture?
Well, I know that we will not get to the end of this discussion today, and that's exactly what has happened because we've gone completely out of time. This discussion on Nigeria will not stop just like that. The fight will continue, and we hope that even government will begin to put things in place to discourage people from easily just dipping their hands into the till and doing all those things that are putting us on the corruption index, in the positions that we are on the corruption perception index.
That's it. That's it.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Dakbo Akinyosho, and legal practitioner, Mr. John Olulibe.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for coming to share your thoughts with us this morning.
Pleasure's all mine.
And thank you for staying with us. You at home, we'll be back in about 2 minutes with another very interesting conversation. Do be sure to join us.
Tunji Maruf Alausa said yesterday that the federal government did not scrap GSS and SSS classes, nor replaced them with a 12-year education model. While addressing the media yesterday in Abuja, he said, during the 2025 Extraordinary National Council of Education meeting on Thursday, the ministry submitted a proposal seeking to mitigate 12 years, to migrate to 12 years of compulsory education while retaining the current 6334 structure. So he said it was encouraging to transition from the 6334 to the 12-4 system of education in order for the country to produce quality graduates, and that the model is presently practiced in many advanced countries like the UK, Brazil, even some African countries like Ghana. The final decision, according to him, will be known during another National Council of Education meeting in October this year, and that the proposal, the 12-4, as opposed to the 6334 basic education model, is not immediate. Let's have conversations around this morning. What do you think of it? We'll have to, of course, the information is on the screen. You can send us a mail and we'll take your comments and questions if you have as well. But right here with us in the studio, we have Dr. Adetola Salau, who is a STEM professional, among other caps she's won. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
As well as a policy maker. Yes.
Siam. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning.
Also joining us are Dr. Adedamola Olofa, who is lead EduNorms Consulting and Education Business School. He joins us virtually. Thank you for joining us. As well as Dr. Olatunji Shobodu, who is an academic and a leadership development expert. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, Dr. Shobodu.
Thank you very much.
Let's begin with you, Dr. Salau.
Yes, of course. In my role as special advisor, of course, at Kwara State, and as a policymaker in Lagos State, of course, I have to chime in on this. I have been asked a lot of questions around this during the week. People have been sending me messages in WhatsApp groups, personally, phone calls. And I want to also correct, I'm glad that that statement came out yesterday, because a lot of people thought it meant, oh my God, everything now is all collapsed into one. No, it wasn't. What happened was in the early 2000s, we adopted making sure that basic education, primary school and JSS, the 9-year basic education model, was followed. And that's what UBEC has been stressing and pushing in the States. Now, what we're saying is, instead of just stopping at JSS, let's make it mandatory all the way to senior secondary. That's the only thing that has changed about this policy. And the policy on itself, as you also reiterated, based on global standards, actually has a lot of positive undertones in the fact that a lot of the students unfortunately think, okay, that's it. Since it's only till 9, let me just drop out at JSS. We need to reduce the dropout rates. It's very, very key. And then literacy. We need our students to be a lot more, be able to comprehend science, be able to comprehend what is happening around the world. A lot of times that kind of understanding, conceptual understanding, happens more in senior secondary. So having them longer, in my view and the view of a lot of educational experts, it's a positive thing and will really help us. Literacy rates, dropout rates, and then also making sure that they are ready for the workforce when they come out. Not everybody, as we know, because it's not just here in Nigeria, but across the world, not everybody will end up at the university. What are they going to do when they finish secondary school? How are they going to be able to be economically viable members of society? We need to start making sure that in that last 3 years, we start addressing that, we start equipping them in skills. So I like to look at this as an opportunity to make sure that we upskill more students.
Help us understand better. What was the objective of the 6334 system that failed? Here is why I'm asking. We know that basic education is, that's why you have UBE, right?
Yes, the UBE I mentioned, yes.
For the first 6 years.
And JSS, so it's 6 plus 3, 9.
Okay, so
JS3.
it was supposed to be
Yes,
9, so
JS3.
essentially
Yes.
like 934.
Yes.
Right? Now, what failed at that point? But before you answer that question, let's quickly let you know that we need to transition. For those of us on the our DSTV platform, strictly our DSTV platform, we are transiting to the official presentation of staff of office to His Royal Highness His Royal Majesty Agri Bechowale as a third-class chief, Kumu 1 of Gombe, by His Excellency Right Honorable Ahmadu Umaru Fintiri, CON, the Executive Governor of Adamawa State. That is taking up right now, and that's only on our DSTV platform. On other platforms, of course, we sustain this conversation. So, what failed? What needs tinkering with, and how will that impact on the next phase?
I always tell everybody, everywhere I go, teachers, there's a lot of upskilling that needs to take place with teachers. There's a lot of work that needs to take place with teachers. I can sum it in just one phrase: teachers are the backbone of reform. In order to be able to deliver the needs that we're trying to that we're trying to address with that basic 9 system, and now of course this 12, the teachers themselves need to be better equipped. So there's serious work that needs to take place with teachers.
Okay. Dr. Olofa, what's your take on this conversation? Because do you agree with Dr. Salah? Let's begin with. Do you agree that the 6334 system failed, or the 934 system didn't quite work well because of teachers?
Okay, thank you very much. I always say, let me start with this way. In 6334, the aim behind it was to create higher academic excellence as well as vocational proficiency that time. That was why topics, something like literature, which is now BSc, was being introduced.
Yes, I remember.
The aim was as a child, as a student is going on any journey, you also catch up with vocational proficiency, so that at the end of the day, you will be a total child. You must be somebody who is very brilliant and yet does not have any skills. And skills can be life skill, like interpersonal, like communication skill, like also skill can also be innovations, coming up with devices and things like that. So that was, I think, was the thing that coincided in 1988. So, but I can't begin to say what exactly was behind the government changing from 6334 to 934. Right, I can't really. But however, if I get you very well, you asked me whether it is a fault the teacher that didn't work out. didn't get it first.
No, I was just asking. We had a system. I think it was. I'm not sure whether. I think it was the Obasanjo government. During the Obasanjo government.
It was during the Obasanjo government
Yes.
that this
That is
basic 9,
6334.
that it became 9.
Yes.
From primary school to GSS. It was during Obasanjo.
Okay.
This UBEC.
Yeah. So, what failed that's informed now what the government
new
is
system.
proposing to effect if approved in October this year?
Okay. Actually, as far as I can observe, I cancelled the 654. So, it was after I said that 634 came. And just experientially, I can't see how the 634 has given us better productivity, learning outcome than 654. Can see.
Okay.
When you change the structure from 654 to 634 into 934, I can't see how the 934 or 634 has produced better graduate or better students than 654.
Okay.
So that is going to tell me that it is not, because we have educational system, we have educational structure. It is not the structure that defines the quality of the learning outcome. It is the system.
Okay.
It's about the curriculums, the policies, the exams, and things like that. They are the one that defines that improves learning outcome, not the structure. So whether 654, 12-4, and so on and so forth. It's not the structure that is following in Nigeria. It's the system.
Okay. Dr. Shepodu, does this therefore mean that a child will have to finish SS before now going into technical school? Because I assume that they could have gone into technical schools from JS3. Is that what it is now? I mean, is that what this system is proposing, or part of what it is proposing?
All right. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I think we're still at a stage where there is a lot of assumptions, conjectures, because the details of what is being proposed, are not really available.
Okay.
I mean, other than saying you want to change from 6334 to 12-4, that appears to be all we know.
Okay.
But you want to ask, the 6334 was introduced in order to achieve certain objectives. Now, were those objectives achieved? What is the evidence that we have? Usually, when policies are implemented, we have a responsibility before you effect change to conduct some kind of assessment. What did we intend to achieve? Did it serve our purpose? In what way? What areas were lacking? Where were disappointments? What were the reasons? So that they become the basis for improving on the system. Because as I believe the first speaker mentioned, there has to be a reason why these changes are being made. And by the way, those changes can have very far-reaching consequences or implications. Are we prepared for them? Do we know those things that are likely to happen? Is this the right time to attempt to carry some of these things out, given other things that are happening, and all of that? And I think one thing that we need to note is, the fact that this looks like just a proposal by the Ministry of Education, and it's still going to the council. The council still has to deliberate. They also acknowledged in what I believe the minister said, that they still have to do a lot of stakeholder, consultations, engagements, to get a sense from other players or participants on whether this is even the way to go.
Okay.
So it appears I was quite, taken aback by the fact that, a lot of people began to immediately pass, make remarks, either condemn or, react, because the details are not in place. And it wasn't surprising that the minister had to quickly come out to say, wait a minute, I mean, our process has really only just begun. So, everyone, please hold your peace. A lot still needs to happen because before this thing has any, shape or form. So the details are not on the table. And it makes it therefore a bit difficult, to intelligently comment on its suitability or otherwise, in my view.
Well, Dr. Shobudu, perhaps one of the reasons that this is an issue for some people is that most of the time we just hear it as a proposal, and before you know what is happening, it's already a law. And then people are like, wait a minute, I thought this was just an idea some people were hypothesizing. And before you know what is hypothesized, before you know it, the hypothesis has become a substantive thing. And you would remember, and I think that system has kind of sustained itself in the Babangida era. It's just an idea, you start discussing it. Structural adjustment program, for instance, was discussed for a long time. And people were saying, I mean, everyone was against it for some reason. A good number of people were against it. But before you know what was happening, the government just factored in all the issues that people raised, and voila, it became something that the government was acting upon. But the reason I am actually interested in your perspective of this is something that Dr. Salau said about teachers. Now, is it a problem of the teachers? Is it a problem of the system of education that we are practicing, or the quality, the processes of it? Alera was, inferring that part of the initiative for the 934 system was that if you get to a point, during the 9 years, and you are not able to sustain academic, you go vocational or technical. But whether or not that is something to be considered is another thing altogether. So what's your take on that perspective? If the federal government, for instance, eventually gets its way and says, okay, we are going the 12-4 system, what will it change, in your opinion?
Well, again, I think I'd like to align with the last speaker who tried to distinguish between this structure and the system. And I think perhaps it may not be so much of a structure or system issue. It may, in fact, be what is the quality of the education itself, and to what purpose are we educating our people? If you're passing through the system, who are we expecting you to become? What are we preparing you for? More than structure, if we don't focus on the outcome, which is the people who are going to, come out of this system, because that system is processing people to become something. We may just be addressing the symptom rather than the root. I think, and that's where the issue of the teachers also come in, because there are many contributors. The teachers are just one of the contributors. They are vital in terms of what become the quality of, the products of the system. Of course, you have to ask yourself, if you implement a new structure, what role do the teachers have to play? Are they sufficiently skilled or endowed to fulfill the demands of that new role? And then you will also, in asking that kind of question, identify what kinds of intervention, is required to make the teachers suitable. I think that rather than spend a lot of time dwelling on structure, which has its place, I think the developmental challenges or imperatives that we face as a nation would suggest that we are better off, paying more attention to the quality.
Okay.
Can I
Dr. Salau, yes.
I've been waiting to interject.
Yes, I know.
Because the key thing, when we talk about quality and when we talk about reform, the key thing is the foundation. And the foundation for us in education always comes down to curriculum. Like he correctly said, what are the students learning? And we have started addressing this last year. And I actually expected more of the public to address and start talking about it and start engaging. There was this press briefing that came out from NERDC, and that's the unit, the agency that is in charge of what materials that our students have in our schools, be it primary school, be it the secondary schools, to some degree, not as much with the tertiary institutions. And they had started mentioning that they wanted to start introducing more vocational skills introduction from the primary schools. I expected to hear more people talk about it and say, yes, this is the way to go. We should start talking about this. We should start addressing this. We should start skilling these teachers to work with the students more on this. That's why it's very important when we're saying that we want the students to be in the schools longer and we're trying to reduce the dropout rates. I was waiting to hear both of the other speakers talk about the fact that our dropout rates are atrocious right now. They're too much. We have students, and particularly when they know that, okay, I'm not going to be held accountable after that JSS 3 if I decide to leave. No, they should stay the whole gamut, get all these skills.
My apologies. What is responsible for the dropout rate? Is it the system or even the curriculum? What is it that will keep me in school?
Part of it is this curriculum review that I'm happy that they've started working on. I have been going to engage the NERDC, talk to them. How do we start bringing in these skills that all over the world they are beginning to address? Of course, digital literacy, which we all know is very key, the other soft skills, making sure that these students are actually scientifically illiterate. I've been going to engage them, and we've been having talks, and they're saying that, look, this is something that we're really working on and it's very, very important. So when that press briefing came out, I was happy. I said, okay, good. They're really putting their, putting their money where their mouth is, because they've been talking about it and finally we're hearing this. But the other part of it is, now we do all that work, the curriculum is adjusted, just like the work we did in Lagos State the first 4 years of the Sanwo-Olu administration when we were working with them. We did quite a lot of review with the curriculum. The next big thing is now working with those teachers, and we did a lot of work with that too. That is the biggest part. They're the people who are the delivery mechanisms. They are the facilitators. They are the ones who engage those children. And yes, at the end, that outcome, which is what are these youth going to become? Fit for purpose. What are they learning here and how are they going to utilize it when they come out? The teachers are the facilitators. They are the guides who help make it happen.
Perhaps one of the challenges, my apologies, perhaps one of the, maybe not challenge, maybe expectations would be, what's the objective as a nation? Alero, before the program began, we were talking about a system in Germany where students were happy to go to school, were compelled to go to school even though they didn't have bathrooms. And there are situations that there are a good number of people watching now who have gone through certain educational experiences, not because it was comfortable, but because of the outcomes. What is it that we are promising the child that will make the child say, come rain, come sun, I'm going to go to school? Yes, I get the point of the teachers and all. But what is that outcome that we are promising that student?
And that's what we need to work on, and that's what I'm here to talk about.
I beg your pardon.
Yes, of course.
You need to take this into cognizance
Yes,
when you are
yes,
making
yes.
your response.
Yes.
That many children now,
Yes.
if you ask them what they want to be when they grow up,
Yes.
I want to be a Yahoo boy.
But I'm aware.
There's that as
I'm
well.
aware, yes.
So take that into cognizance as
And
you
yes,
respond
and
to
that's
this.
where I'm coming to next. That one of the biggest things that needs to be done with this curriculum, and also with their teachers, is making sure that we're future-proofing what we're teaching them, so that when they come out, whatever they're learning in school is something that they can utilize when they come out. I like to give the example all the time of myself, of how when I finished JSS, my exams, my mother said, oh, instead of just sitting at home, one of the things, she foresaw the PC revolution. So she said, she noticed that everything that had to do with the computers, they were based on the same model for the typewriter, that's the keyboard.
Yeah.
And she said one of the basic skills, really, really critical, you will need to have is being able to type fast. So she made me use that holiday in between taking that, as we call it, junior WAEC, to start learning how to be a fast typist.
Did you do ASD?
I did all that, and I can tell you, fast forward till now, people are always amazed when they're having conversations with me that I'm able to type, I'm able to do other things and type fast, and I put out my work really fast because of that training. That's what needs to happen in our schools. We need to start saying, okay, intro tech, how do we adapt it to making sure that these students become innovators, researchers, right there in the class? They're learning digital marketing now. How do we make them become better communicators right there in the classroom, be able to speak, be able to be content creators? How do we start adapting what is happening in the classroom to what is happening outside? And not even just happening outside now, 5 years, 10 years. I was just reading on Twitter yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday. 21 years of Facebook. And I said, oh my God. And I started remembering, there was no Facebook when I finished secondary school and when I was in college. Facebook started right after grad school for me. So yes, 21 years. And look at how it has changed everything. So us pretending that things are going to be like this now when they come out. No, it's not. Everything keeps changing and iterating real fast. In fact, faster than ever now. So it's right now in the classrooms that we start preparing them for uncertainty. There you go. That's the word I was looking for uncertainties. And being a Yahoo boy is not sustainable. They're going to find that out. I mean,
well, I think maybe the Yahoo boy, we can just interpret it to digital skills.
Yes.
You know, but Dr.
And yes, that's what needs to happen in the classroom. They need to utilize those digital skills positively. I was telling someone, all these freelance editors and gurus or whatever that are in Malaysia, China, India, those skills that these students are using to do Yahoo, imagine translating it and them now being able to carry out that work online and get paid for it. It's the same thing.
Dr. Olofa, so here we are. You know, I'm still looking at the place of vision. What do you think should be a national vision, or how do we integrate a national vision into our education system, not just the curriculum, education system, in such a way that everything around education is all about national development?
All right, thank you very much. You see, there's something we get wrong with we get the rationale behind education wrong. We believe that education is about going to school and become just being brilliant academically. So our emphasis is always on get A star, get A, get B. We leave the other side of education, you know, which is the aspect of giving.
Oh dear.
That's unfortunate.
Well, we're going to come back to you on that question, but I don't know. I hope Dr. Shobodu, is with us as well, because I mean, you are in the human capital development space, and Dr. Salau just mentioned something like that Facebook was just 21 years ago. Okay, Mr. Rafa, please go ahead. Go ahead, Mr. Rafa. Doctor. Oh, okay. All right. So
now what?
Go ahead. We can hear you.
All right. I'm sure.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Good. Now, education is not about academics alone. It's about producing a total child, and that starts from the curriculum. The curriculum we have in Nigeria is already outdated. Till now, it's still outdated. It cannot meet the global demands. If it cannot even meet national demand, the question was that how can we align national vision with education? The thing is that any time education has to be in existence, what should be happening in the classroom should have to be industry fit. You should also be able to give skill to the child now, not in the future. For instance, if a child is learning a topic in home economics and the topic is teaching, the aim or the objective of that topic should not be that at the end of this lesson, people will be able to define stages, mention types of stages, and a couple of stages. No. That's academic side. It should be that at the end of this lesson, people should be able to make their clothes or design household fabric materials. So that after 1 week, that child must have learned stitches. He would have acquired a skill in stitches. Then you also go to mathematics. If the topic is ratio in grade 4, it will be at the end of the lesson, a child will be able to find the ratios of in a question or define ratio. It should be that at the end of this topic, the child should be able to be just and fair in sharing items. That should be the first objective.
Okay.
Second one should be, go on.
Yes, go ahead.
So second objective for ratio should be that at the end of this learning ratio in mathematics, the child should be a better cook. If you wondering how better cook comes into mathematics, it's because ratio comes in the kitchen. So big.
The ratio of meat to the salt. I get that. I know that Dr. Salam is itching to respond to you very quickly.
I'm itching. Yeah, for me, it really comes down to being practical. The example I gave earlier, you saw how practical that was. I believe we need to make it a lot more practical, and that means all of us. And I like to tell people that the only way that I see us really achieving this is public-private partnerships. So people like you coming in and working with our teachers, working with us in government, and trying to carry this out. When I was in Lagos State, one of the things that we advised our commissioner and the governor was this kind of public-private partnerships, and we carried out entrepreneurship training for the teachers and the students. Right there, we worked with 14-year-olds, 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds. We taught them how to create small capital businesses for themselves, which means that when they come out of school, they already have these skills. They can become employers and employ other people and be able to generate revenue and become, what I had said earlier, economically viable members of society. So entrepreneurship training, programs like that, things that are practical, mentorship, coming in to speak to the students, working with the students, right there in the classroom, that's where it happens. That's where we have to. So it really, really needs to be practical. It needs to be hands-on and all hands on deck. That's why I said PPP, public-private partnerships. That's the way this is going to happen.
All right.
Dr. Shobodu. Sorry, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I'd like to bring in Dr. Shobodu. Dr. Shobodu, let me take you back to the days before Nigeria had universities. Most of our parents did not go to university because they couldn't afford to travel abroad to get higher education. So they had to make do with what we call West African School Certificate. That was the bar for them, and it was the best that they had. But guess what? They were the ones who all became the civil servants when Nigeria became independent, and we don't get reports that they were not efficient at their jobs. So, is this system going to get us to that kind of education which presented these kinds of people who were all employable, and those who wanted to become entrepreneurs were able to go into entrepreneurship, and those who wanted to work with government had the skill set to work in the civil service?
Okay, I mean, that sounds pretty, appealing, what transpired in those days with our parents, but you must understand that things have changed very radically between then and now. For you to be relevant today, there are certain minimum requirements, skill requirements, and basic, literacy. So, it's quite, what happened then maybe was okay for their time, but today things have to be approached differently. But there is something, I've been meaning to talk about on this subject, which I think we can borrow from what transpired there, and that is character. And quite frankly, if you talk about the needs of Nigeria today, there are those skills, but there is perhaps more importantly, the requirement of character. All right? Developing men and women of good, strong character. Whatever you talk about today, talk about politics, talk about corruption and what have you, we have a character challenge as a nation. Now, I would be asking, yes, the skills are important, but quite frankly, many of those skills you can very quickly develop. But character is not something you can develop in 6 months, in 3 months, like you can acquire some of the skills that we're talking about, today. Now, these changes we're trying to effect in the education system or structure, what promise do they make for us in terms of the person of those that we produce from that system? Will they address this character challenge?
Well, that question, Dr. Shobodu, I'm going to let Dr. Salau answer it in a bit. But one thing that you have to respond to is, we had a Minister of Education in this country who said that graduates were not employable. And those graduates, of course, came through the 6334 system. In fact, there must have been another number before the 6. Maybe Dr. Salah can speak to that one. Now, if at that point the graduates, according to the minister, were not employable, that must say something about the process before, doesn't it? Because we know there are some people in this country who just went and did, as Dr. Olofa said, 6-5, and they jettisoned the 4, and they are amazingly successful in businesses and all of that today. So what's your take on that one? You have lectured in the university before, so you probably have an idea.
Well, yes, I mean, one of the things you would hear people say today also is something. I mean, I see some adverts and people tell you, there are a couple of books, if you read them, it's more than a 4-year degree and stuff like that. Where in the age of, where priorities are changing, where focus is changing, and basically people are talking about how to make money and all of that. So we have sort of, viewed the provision of education as being there just for the purpose, of making money, which in my view is not quite the case. But let's track a bit and focus on, it's a shame that, a minister would make that kind of statement. What you then expect is, okay, now that you say the graduates are not employable, what steps are you going to take to address that? And that's where there's the issue of, regulation, supervision. I thought that there are bodies such as the NUC who are supposed to be keeping track to ensure that the quality of the programs that the universities, for example, are offering, is comparable across the different universities. Now, if graduates are not employable, it's either one, the courses that they are taking are not relevant to the demands, of the economy, or that the quality of their programs, do not endow them sufficiently to live to the expectations, of the market out there. Now, if it's a quality of program issue, then that falls squarely at the doorsteps of those who are supposed to be regulating. So again, you come back to the issue of, even if we change the structure, all right, that we have within the context, the larger context of the system, the issue of ensuring that quality of education is comparable across the board still remains. Are we going to have, is there a provision, all right, in the changes that are being proposed that will address that?
Okay.
That will address that.
All right.
And the issue of curriculum will speak to employability if it is the case that you are offering programs that have little relevance, all right, to the needs of your environment or your market.
It's a long conversation, Dr. Dr. Shoburu, but you want to answer the question he raised about character?
Yes, I do. And I also want to make sure that the public is aware of the body that is in charge of the curriculum. When I said NERDC, I realized I was speaking as someone who is speaking to my fellow educational stakeholders. The NERDC is a Nigerian Educational Research Development Council. They're the agency of the federal government, and they are charged with the responsibility of our educational policies. So curriculum falls within their purview, and they are the ones who have been making sure, like if you go into the classroom, JSS1 is doing integrated science, these are the topics, these are the aims and objectives for the teachers. They're the ones who break that down for each of these subjects. They are the ones. And they are the ones who also have these different subjects. So now we come to character education. Yes, I agree. It's very important. If you look at the Asian countries, it is something that is deeply embedded, even in America. Now that I think about it too. It is, yes, it is. It is embedded into the educational system in such a way that over and over and over, in what we call social studies here, they call it, what do they call it over there now? I'm trying to remember. Global studies or something like that. In there, they are constantly talking about what is your responsibility as an individual in the society, your rights, you're paying taxes, what do ethics mean. They break all of this down over and over and over. From the time you're 6 years old, they constantly keep on coming back to that. What is your responsibility in your community? How are you engaged? What does the parent-teacher forum mean? What does it mean, the council? What does it mean, what does the mayor do? What do those councillors do? They constantly keep on breaking that down and explaining it. In the UK, they do that. In the US, I personally know that because I was an educator over there in New York and across other states there in the US. They constantly keep on breaking that over and over and over. This is something, yes, I agree, that we need to emphasize. We need to return back to. It needs to be deliberated more and more in social studies. And beyond that, we should have, that's why I keep on mentioning mentorship. You notice I keep on coming back to that and bringing that over and over and over. We need to have more of us come in and engage in the classrooms. I saw that when I was an educator in the US. The people from these different companies, they come in, they engage with the children. Parents spend lots of time in the classroom with the students. They volunteer, they help, they speak to the students, they do reading sessions. They are constantly immersed and involved.
Is there any chance that we'll get parents to do that here? Don't answer that question yet.
Okay. This is from Ojuromi Fred. Your question about what failed in the 6334 model has not been answered. What failed was first, 3 was supposed to be craft-based.
Okay, the first 3 was supposed to be craft-based. Okay, go on.
The children were to learn craft, test their skills to determine their areas of interest, and unfortunately, it was not followed through by government. That is why that model failed.
Do you agree?
No, I disagree. The major thing, we need to understand, What is the most important thing from that 6? And then we now get into JSS. Literacy, numeracy, communication. That was key. Unfortunately, I am not going to strike away from that. It wasn't delivered. But that is key. For a child to be able to come out from primary school, be able to read, be able to comprehend, you'll be able to ask the child a question and the child be able to answer it and be able to pull in facts from whatever, from the news, from other sources. That is key. For a child, the other day I was traveling to out of state. I was going to, I think it was Ibadan, I was going to Oyo State. And I asked this young child, unfortunately, who really should have been in school, not on the streets. And I said, here's 1,000 naira, I bought this. And the child could not compute the change back, could not estimate. That to me is a failure right there. Numeracy is such an important skill.
You have plenty of questions to answer. So
yes,
just
I know.
Taking it one
all right.
We don't have much
okay, so
time.
go ahead.
Well, this one is from Celestine Okoli, who says, I believe this is going to be good as it will reduce dropouts from secondary level. I think this one is again. However, I want to ask, will common entrance and GSSE be eliminated?
Common entrance is them from primary school to secondary school. So no, it will not be eliminated. They still have to take it.
Okay. There are some questions here. This one is from Professor Enakena. Says, if we lack manpower and proper infrastructure to make an educational system work, no matter the adduced proposal to continue the changing of educational model without proper infrastructure and remuneration of teachers and retraining facilities or structures to strengthen basic skills of teachers, is like howling in the dark. I think you spoke to that, Dr. Salau.
Yes, I did.
Proposing a 12-year basic education model, and this one is from BEM, should be considered after a review of curricula and teacher competency frameworks. You also spoke to that. I think everyone has actually spoken to that. Well, Professor Enakena is back, says no model of basic education fails. It's the institutions that lack effective manpower to arrest the rot or defect in the current system. How many teachers do we have in Nigeria to manage our school system as adopted? According to the Minister of Education, Tunji Alausa, he espoused that the 12-year basic education model plan would enable pupils to benefit from uninterrupted learning up to the age of 16.
Yeah. And then Festus Akimboye says, while we're discussing reforming our 12-year basic education model, we should also promote apprenticeship. Apprenticeship will hasten our development.
Skills.
Your comment on that?
Yes,
Skills
which is what I mentioned,
yes.
and I know it's very, very key. That's why I keep on harping on it. Skills development. Yeah. It's the most important thing. Until we start addressing that and working on that right there in our schools, we're going to keep on missing the mark.
Dr. Oshobo, very quick one. We've run out of time. What is the place of culture in all of this, particularly in our education? There are those who would reference what happens in China, that they teach whatever subject in their local languages. They teach the little kids in nursery school and all. They teach them craftsmanship. You know, I mean, hands-on, not just on the computer. Yeah. But, you know, in our part of the world, there are, you know. So anyway, what's the place of culture in education in Nigeria? How significantly do you think it'll be?
Well, there are a number of issues that I think one can address. However, let me say that when you look at Nigeria's motto, all right, it talks about unity and faith, peace and progress, and so that right there is one of the, you know, benchmarks for assessing what the products of your educational system. They should be such, all right, as in alignment with what you claim to stand for as a nation. Now, that also dovetails into the issue of culture. Your education, you know, system has to be such that recognizes the peculiarities of your culture. You can't, if you want to preserve, okay, your identity as a nation, as a people, you can't just throw your culture, out through the window. Your pursuit of skills, your development of character, all of that must be situated within the context of what you want to preserve, all right, in your culture. Now, again, this is one of the areas where we have a challenge. And, earlier on I spoke about character. The other thing that I want to remind us is increasingly becoming a challenge that we must address, okay, as a matter of urgency and within the context of the educational system, is the unity or disunity, as the case may be. We have that issue currently. Nigeria is increasingly, dividing, and dividing by across tribal lines is very dangerous. It's very dangerous. So even if you want to, take cognizance of your culture, which culture are you talking about? If you are tribal oriented, does it mean now that every, segment or region is going to try to configure, its educational development?
No, what I mean by that is, the approach to dispensing the curriculum that Dr. Salah.
Okay, I mean, talking more specifically about the language of delivery.
Perhaps.
I think it makes sense. Yeah. I think it makes sense because when you find it's a shame that because. And many of us have seen it.
But it's been addressed in some of our states. We've talked about coming back to the primary language.
You're saying, go ahead.
Yes, it's been addressed. Right. I'm sorry, Prof, to interject. I have to interject on this. It has been addressed in a couple of our states. And if I remember correctly, yes, in 2023, even on the federal level, we have said, let us start delivering learning in the primary tongue of the students. So it's been addressed.
Yes, correct. Yes. What I was going to say, I agree. What I was going to say is to endorse that as a way to go.
Okay.
Is to endorse that as a way to go. Yes.
I'm actually looking forward to how they will interpret Pythagoras' theorem in Ishekiri, in Alero's language.
Ishekiri, yes.
It
will be done. All you have to do is make it practical. No, it's very practical. I can tell you how it can be done. It's very practical. Just tell them about going to the forest and taking the shorter path. It's very easy.
That's Pythagoras' theorem.
What are you doing? You're going from one end to another end, and then this is a shortcut.
Yeah, go ahead.
Somebody teaches that. Somebody teaches that currently.
On the issue of using indigenous languages to deliver teaching in the classroom, we must be very careful about that. We try to compare ourselves with those countries like China, like France.
Okay. I think we're already segueing into another conversation altogether, which will come to some other time. We have to thank you this morning. Dr. Adedamola Olofa is lead EduNorms Consulting and Education Business School.
Thank you very much.
He's also joined us along with Dr. Olatunji Shobodu, who is an academic and a leadership development expert. Both of them joined us virtually. Dr. Adetola Salah is here with us. She's SA Education Policy Formulation and Human Capital in Kwara State and former SSA Education to the Lagos State Governor. She is also, of course, a STEM professional. I don't even know how many hats.
Very a lot.
Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
In all of this, you have to maintain your composure with ease. You have to maintain your mental stability
with
steez.
Okay.
We'll be right back. Abram, despite the intense pressures or challenges posed by the current situation, it said that it helps you to navigate the crisis effectively, whether personal, societal, or global. Please help me. We have Miracle Ihoma with us. As you can see on the screen, he is a clinical psychologist to help us understand this whole thing. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
How are you maintaining mental stability
How are you maintaining it, sir?
Me?
Yes.
It's my job to ask the questions. That's one of the ways I address it.
Artful dodger.
Because I'm sure you are doing a good job with that. Yes. Yeah. How I'm able to maintain mental stability in crisis is a lot of ways, but there is also the role of preparing for crisis even before they come. Yes, because every one of us is going to go through crisis situations at different points in our lives. I usually like to say that there are only three kinds of people in relation to crisis: those in a crisis, those about to go into a crisis, those who just came out of a crisis. Every one of us belong into one of these categories. So you're either in a crisis right now, about to go into the crisis, or you're just coming out of one. So it's very important that you prepare for that crisis, right? Because if you're not prepared for it, it's going to overwhelm you when it eventually comes. That's not to say that you are expecting problems. There's a difference between expecting and preparing for problems. Is that you are preparing for it so that when it comes, you are in that mental and emotional state to deal with it. Because I've even said that even good things can pose crisis situations. Good things can have bad effects. Yes, something as good as traveling abroad has sent many people into a crisis situation. Something as good as giving birth to a new baby.
Those who go abroad,
Yeah,
that is a good thing. But the problem is
Depending on what you're going
they
for.
didn't prepare.
exactly.
They were not expecting
Yes,
what they met.
they did not prepare adequately for it. Even marriage, people going to marriage, everybody's celebrating that a new marriage is born, but then that could pose an emotional and mental threat to either one or the two parties involved in that marriage, depending on how prepared they are for that marriage. Even a new job, promotion. So it's very important that we prepare mentally and emotionally for crisis even before they come.
Okay, miracle.
Yeah.
I mean, in a country as religious as Nigeria, what you're saying now will look like you are using your mouth to say bad things and attract bad things to yourself. How can you sit down and be preparing for crisis which hasn't come yet? It's like you want to invite the crisis.
Yeah.
It means you don't have faith.
Thank you. You know how exactly. That's what the typical Nigerian would tell you.
There's a thin line between faith and wisdom. A very thin line. And you could be operating in foolishness and think you're operating in faith. Right? And at the same time, you can also be operating in foolishness and think you're operating in wisdom. So there's a thin line between faith and wisdom, and it's important to know and decipher that thin line, right? Preparing for Christ, like I said, is not the same thing as expecting
it.
or calling crisis into your life. No, it's just that you know that at one point or the other there'll be challenging situations. That's what makes us human beings. That's what makes us
part of life.
A part of life, right? Challenges are an integral part of life. In fact, without challenges, life will be boring. Challenges is what makes life interesting. Yeah, and that's a perspective as well. Because if one doesn't have this perspective, it also means they might not even be able to deal properly with crisis when it comes. Because if I have a perspective that challenges make life interesting, when I have a challenge, I say, wow, this is an interesting thing, let me now display and exhibit the wisdom God has given me in this situation and how to handle it.
So essentially it's about, first of all, about your perception of the situation.
Exactly.
Okay. Now when you say preparing mentally, please help us see if you can decrypt it.
Okay.
Because as Alero said, God forbid, it's a default for many of us in Africa in particular. We just ended a conversation on education, and there are those who would have said, look, there are some things that we shouldn't even be talking about. Unfortunately, we are talking about those things today. So when you say preparing mentally for something that has not occurred, what do you mean? For instance,
okay,
I have a very good job. I'm doing my job well. I am acing all my numbers, and I am bringing goodwill to my organization. But for some reason, something happens in the organization, rather to the organization. And I am one of those people affected by the restructuring or reorganization the company has to do so that the organization, can remain afloat.
Yep.
What's my own? I did everything I was supposed to do. I'm a good staff. I'm a productive staff.
Yeah.
So, what did I do?
You didn't do anything. You didn't do anything. And if that person has been adequately prepared, for instance, it would mean that, number one, it won't even take time for the person to get a new job, because the person has been preparing for the future of either that organization or his or her own future, to say that, okay, I don't want to remain at this level forever. And sometimes because for you to even get from one level to the next level, sometimes there has to be a disruption. And some of those times you initiate the disruption. Some other times circumstances initiates it.
Okay, so you can sometimes
initiate the disruption yourself and say, I'm leaving this organization. Even though sometimes it might look bleak, it might look like there might be uncertainties about what the future holds for you. But you can initiate that disruption and say you're leaving, right? But it can also happen that the organization is sending you out of, is maybe reorganizing, like you said, or they're even sacking you. But any of which is the fact that it is an initiation, and at least that's how I choose to look at it. For my next sack. Okay, you were laid off.
They're laying you off.
Talking about laying off.
Yes.
You talked about those who can prepare for it. Okay, there was an example Alero, talked about earlier, in the previous conversation, where civil servants, they called them then super PAMSECs and permanent secretaries of the Federal Civil Service. They were laid off by the government
unceremoniously.
And according to some of our guests who discussed it,
in fact, their sacking was announced on radio.
Yes,
without them even knowing.
They heard that they had been
they
fired.
heard it. Probably didn't get a letter or anything.
No.
So there is nothing to prepare them for that.
Yes.
Now, it could still happen today.
Yes.
A building, God forbid, a building collapses. People die.
Yeah.
And the people whose lives were attached to the people who died, they are right automatically in a crisis.
Yes.
There's nothing that could have prepared them for that. How do you even, first of all, balance out?
Yeah.
Before, how do you prepare for a thing like that?
Yeah. For that kind of a thing, you definitely wouldn't have prepared for it. There's no way you would have known that, okay, something like that is coming. There's certain things you know are coming, that you prepare for. There's certain things you don't know are coming that meets you, quote unquote, unprepared. But then, how you have also nurtured yourself emotionally and mentally, that would not be the emotional and mental preparation that you have had before that time, would also determine how you handle it. That's why, that's a crisis situation where, say, 15 people were laid off. You might realize that 2 people might decide to take their life. 2 other people might decide to go to the village. 3 other people might decide to start a business and then thrive in 5 years. 5 other people might get another job. So you are wondering, one other person might go into depression. Another one might be hospitalized. You are wondering, how come the same thing happened to all of them, but they responded differently to it? That's to say that their emotional and mental bandwidth was different. And one of the things that helps you, just like you mentioned earlier, is also your interpretation of that situation, right? If you see that situation as the end of your life, you are definitely going to respond to it that way. I tell people that it is not circumstances that determines our emotions and actions. No, it is actually our interpretation of circumstances that determines our emotions and our actions. That is why people respond differently to the same thing. If it was circumstances that determines our emotional and action or reactions, then people should respond and feel exactly the same way to the same things. The fact that we all respond differently means that it could not be this thing that is causing somebody to feel this way or act this way. It is their interpretation of it. One person was laid off. he said, wow, this is an opportunity to start more intelligently. And he starts a business. And that person was laid off. He says, I've been working in this place for 25 years. My life is over. Where will I even start from? And then he goes to the village. The same thing happened to them. They responded differently. Or goes to the lagoon. Because of their interpretation of that situation.
But, the people who are already, there's no one can argue with the sense that you're making. Mr. Hoover, let's be honest about that. I mean, it's like knowing that, look, at the end of the day, something is going to happen. I'm going on the streets, for instance, I hit my leg and I fall. I have two options. Either I stay down there or I get up. Even if I decide to stay down there, I could either rot there or I get people to lift me up. So it's part of the... But how about people who struggled to get to a particular level just to balance out? We've had cases of inferno in the markets. Channels Television has covered quite a bit. And I think it was in Ibadan or even in Lagos, I don't remember quite correctly. And the woman was crying that every investment she has was in a particular warehouse that got burnt, totally destroyed. No insurance, nothing, no fallback position and anything. How does one get out of that? Now, on the other hand, now let's make that scenario worse. So someone lost everything, and while still brewing and moping over that one, hears of the death of a child.
Wow.
You see? You said wow.
Of course.
So they bring that. We don't even have the culture in our country of going to see a psychologist. Yeah. How does that kind of person prepare? Because what I hear you say is to maintain mental stability, you have to just be prepared for anything. That's what I hear you saying. But how do you prepare for such things that are almost unthinkable, such as these?
Yes. So, like I said, there are things you can't prepare for. But in that moment when it happens, you also need to see the positive side to it, or look at more rational, look at that situation in a more rational way. Yes, because there's what is called rational thinking and irrational thinking. Yeah, rational thinking is not necessarily right or wrong thinking. It is what is a rational thing to think about the situation. And there are also irrational ways to think about a situation. For example, the scenario you painted, an inferno happened, burnt everything they have worked for many years for, and hears about the death of a child. That's it's a very disastrous situation. Yes, there are actually two ways. You could begin to think about irrational things like your life is over. The reason it's irrational is because if you look at it, if we look at the intricacies of that statement, your life is not really over because you are still even alive. So that's irrational. A rational way to think is, okay, this is a disastrous situation. You are not being blind to the situation. You are not trying to faith it in that sense and make it look like it doesn't exist. You are saying this is a disastrous situation, but I know I can come out of this, which is rational because you can't come out of it actually. You can actually make whatever it is you have made in that business, right? I don't know if it was a businessman who said that, take everything that I have, right? Every single kobo that I have made, every single dollar that I have made, pick me and take me to another place, another country where I have nothing to start with. Just give me a little time, I will build everything that I currently have in that other place. Because it's a skill set that you have developed. And that's what happens really. As you are building the life that you want, you are developing a skill set. You are developing emotional resilience. You are developing all of those things. So that even when you lose everything, you haven't lost that. Right? It lives in the inside of you. Just like even the job situation. They sack you, but they didn't sack the skills that you've developed in that job.
True.
Right? So it means that you can, with that skill, get another job, or even start an organization based on the things you've learned. That's if you've been learning, which is a part of the preparation that we're talking about. right? So at the end of the day, it still falls back to how you are able to interpret that situation that has befallen you or has happened at that point in time. To say that, am I rational about the way I'm interpreting this, or am I irrational in the way I'm interpreting it?
Which means that sometimes you are even prepared without knowing, that
exactly.
you are prepared.
Yes.
But you know that the
Yes.
first thing that is attacked in all this conversation we're having is your emotions. You can't legislate emotions. You can't even legislate your reaction about any particular thing. That is why the first thing that will come out of the mouth of a clergyman when they tell the person, irrespective of faith, when they tell the person something unfortunate has happened, I've heard as jokes, some people will say the first thing that the clergyman said was yekpa.
I was thinking the location man said it is well.
So sometimes you can't legislate emotions.
Yeah.
You can't legislate our humanity from some of the things that happen to us.
Yeah.
We are human. We will react in a particular way.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when a thing happens the first time, our initial reaction may not be this rational thing you are thinking about.
It is most likely going to be based on how that person has trained themselves to react to smaller things even before that time. Because there's what is called reflexive thoughts. The same way we have reflex actions. For instance, you yawn without thinking about it. You just yawn. Your knee jerks. You sneeze. All of these are reflex actions. But it's also what is called reflexive thoughts. Reflexive thoughts are your predominant way of thinking about things. So they could either be rational or irrational. So a lot of people, for instance, have trained themselves to think irrational about things. So that when something happens, I don't know if you've met such people, their first way of thinking about that thing, of reacting, is usually negative.
It's yekpa.
That's their reflexive thought thinking, right? They didn't prepare for it. It just happens. But there are other people that no matter what happens, their first reaction is usually a sense of calm,
Rational.
just usually rational.
They're calm. Yes.
The way they have also trained themselves to think over time.
Yes.
So when things happen to us, our reflexive thoughts will show. If we have trained ourselves to be rational, it will show. If we have trained ourselves to be irrational, it will also show.
Okay, if I ask you another question, I will take another 5 minutes, but we are out of time.
So we should we should train ourselves as we go along. Is what you're saying?
Very importantly.
Perhaps the next question will be how. Don't answer that question because our time is out. Thank you so much for your time this morning. Mike Miracle Ihoma is a clinical psychologist. So, Alera's favorite segment is what we are going to next. She calls it
The home stretch.
We'll be right back.
He's a documentarian. He's an author. He's an acclaimed Nollywood actor. And he's been acting for about 3 decades. And he has featured in over 100 African movies, including Alice, My First Lady, Rings of Fire, Mark of the Beast, Never Say Never. That sounds like a James Bond movie. Please welcome Joseph Okechukwu. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you for having me.
Well, that trailer, I didn't see you. Were you in it?
I was in it. You didn't look very well.
Oh, maybe I wasn't.
yeah, you
I
distracted.
wasn't looking.
No, his glasses.
I was in there. Yeah.
Yeah,
you very much.
I need to add yours to mine. Good to have you with us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let's start at the very beginning.
Okay.
How did you get into Nollywood?
Okay. So I just turned 50 on the 4th of February, right? And part of my story, when I was telling the story of my how I started, was letting them know where it all began. It started from befriending a fellow Nollywood actor who was a big star then. His name is Bob Manuel Udoku.
Okay.
All right.
That's
And
that's a boy.
Yeah, that's a boy. So I was a marketer then, and then we became friends, and then.
I'm local.
Well, yeah.
This is an
And this is my
old
first
movie.
lady. This is probably one of the most popular. I mean, all over the place. That's what you're watching.
Is that Ireti?
No, that's Patience Ozoko.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. That's
yours truly.
That's a young Joe Okechukwu.
Yes. So it was Bob Manuel. That's where it all started from. So I used to come to Bob Manuel's house, and then I'll be criticizing some of the things I would see in the movies. I'm like, Bob, why is this person acting like this? In fact, look at this one praying. If somebody tells you that somebody woke up from the dead after this kind of prayer, will you believe it? So I was so used to always critiquing the whole stuff. So one day Bob Manuel just looked at me and he said, Joe, you have all that it takes. Why don't you just come in and join us?
Come and do it.
And continue to do it. That was it. And like joke, he invited me to an audition at Hint Magazine headquarters. Jodo, remember Hint?
Yes.
Yes, at Ojodu. And I attended. The title of the movie was Millionaires Are Saints. That was the title. That was the first movie audition I attended in my whole life. And it was Bob that invited me. When I went there, I was there. I came there with so much gravitas, so much, I was like...
Confidence.
Yeah, so much confidence. Like, let me just go and do that thing and show them that I can do it. Man, I failed the audition.
Show them.
Failed the audition.
Let me show them how to do it.
How to do it. Because Bob had already told me now. He gave me confidence that, Joe, you have what it takes. Come. I went there to go and show them how to do it. I failed audition. And I came so fast.
Cut you down to the side.
They didn't even let me. It was so fast. I got angry. I'm like, these people, I'm already making money as a marketer. I can't do this anymore. Bob laughed at me. He said, bros, calm down. We all went through that. If this is your industry, calm down. I mean, I took a break, and then I later came back again, and then went to do the next audition, and then I passed the audition. And that was where the journey began. Then we had Rituals, Mark of the Beast, Karishika, Part 2, and all. That was just how it started for me.
Cool.
And as soon as I went in, I felt like I was home.
Well, did you also study veterinary medicine? Because Alera is going to ask you that one anyway.
How?
I mean, because...
What did you study?
So I studied filmmaking.
Okay.
And I'm currently now studying...
Related. For once.
Yeah, I studied filmmaking at the New York Film Academy, okay, Universal Studios in LA. And I'm currently also studying communications. I'm almost done with that. I'm taking it also to PG. I kind of love communication studies a lot, okay? So that's my background in terms of academics.
Now, since you got into Nollywood...
Yes.
You see, I put it in inverted commas. We'll come back to that.
Yes.
Was there a culture shock for you?
Interesting question. Okay, so there was a little bit of a culture shock because I was doing something else. I was a very, very, very successful marketer. I was a sales rep, and companies were looking for me all over. In fact, a company had to poach me. There's a company called Eurodix, poached me from where I was because I was bringing in so much money to the company that I was working for. And so when I was going into the industry, I was going into a totally different terrain. The only thing I had as a connection to the industry was my instinct that told me that, look, you belong here. But other than that, everything around me was in the marketing aspect. But the moment I went in, that culture shock hit me only once. And afterwards, that was why I took a break when I failed the audition.
Reality check.
Reality check.
No. That was a culture knockout.
So it was a matter of, well, if you belong here, then you will come back. If you don't belong, well, that means you have fallen out. But because I belong there, I believe I came back. And when I came back, I was so determined.
You came back with a bang.
I came back with a bang. The first audition passed it. The second one cleaned it. The third one knocked it out.
No,
I hadn't failed any audition again from that time.
The reason I asked about that is, and you will tell us what the culture shock was.
Yeah.
There are many who, like you, are doing exceptionally well in the wrong industry right now.
Yeah.
I need to come home or go home. So, first of all, what was it that shocked you in the culture? Is it because you were already doing very well, very comfortable in your field, and then you now had to come to a place where they said, "Oh, guy, you are a non-starter," or was it something about the environment? What was it really?
So it was a combination of virtually all of that. All right, I was already doing well in a different industry, completely at parallel with this one, totally different.
Why did you then switch?
So it was Bob Manuel. That's why I told you the story.
Ooh,
I was a marketer. I used to go and give the guy gifts from my company. We were importing all kinds of stuff, air fresheners, toothbrushes. I said, so I just made friends with a big star. You know, remember those days now? It was Bob and Kate Henshaw, when the sun sets, all those love things. Bob was in all of them. So he was like the king. Like when you were with Bob, if I told people that I met Bob Manuel, they would be like, whoa, really? I said, he's my friend. You know, so I was giving him gifts, and then we became close, and then I started, critiquing all these things. And then the guy challenged me. I took it, first of all, as a challenge, even though I'd always known there was something a little artistic, cinematic about me. But, because growing up, I used to entertain everybody in the house. That's what my mother said. When my mother found out that I was in the industry, she said, I don't think I'm surprised. Because growing up, everybody will come together. I would be the one to entertain them. I would do some comical stuff, do some acting stuff for everybody in the house. And they didn't know why, even though my mother was provisioning me to go and read electrical and electronics engineering, So when I got into the industry, my shock was, first of all, where I am coming from and where I just arrived. The environment was totally, completely different. The way the people dressed, the way people behaved. Me, I wore a one thing like that. I almost put on a tie to go to attend audition. Tucked in, wore my Mr. shoes, everything. To come for there. And also people wear t-shirts, just dressed anyhow, relax, talk. Girls will sit on top of boys, talking, gums, smoke. I'm like, really? Okay. So I had to adjust a little bit. And these were normal people. So after that period, when I failed the audition, I felt, well, I don't even like this place. Maybe sour grapes. But at the end of the day, I just realized these are just normal people. It's just the environment they found themselves in. These are some of the things that are prevalent, but you find a lot of wonderful, amazing human beings there, which I found out as time went on. So that was how my shock came around.
Okay. Now, as a result of that, you know that there are some people right now watching us who have ran away. They ran away from the industry because of this same culture shock. But then there are some who, even though they have a kind of quote-unquote calling for the entertainment generally, they're unable to sustain it because they have certain personal codes of ethics that they find difficult to adjust to.
Yeah.
Do you see a need for some changes in the industry? As you said, they are normal people and all of that, but perception is another thing altogether.
Yes.
Do you see a need to make some adjustments so that can probably improve the image of the industry, or you think it's okay the way it is?
Okay, so the need to make adjustment is huge. There's a massive need for us to make adjustment. But if you ask me, after all these years, I would tell you that the adjustment is needed the most by the people who are desiring to go into the movie industry. I have met a bunch of parents who met me and handed their daughters and their sons over to me and said, I've been looking around the whole place to who can I trust my daughter with or my son with, and the only person I can think of is you. People don't understand that in our industry, there is need for orientation. Many people come in and all they are thinking of, their whole focus is, I want to be famous. I want a situation where when I walk on the street, everybody will say, that's him, that's her. There are a lot of professional hazards, occupational hazards involved in this job. You need to understand that. So if you go through a proper orientation, you will be able to be grounded So many people, you've heard it, and there's no need hiding it. A lot of people have, when you tell them about movie industry, they say, oh, is it not that place where before you get the road, they'll tell you, come and sleep with the director. Come on. Let me tell you the truth. It happens in the banking sector, probably even worse than it happens in the entertainment industry. It happens in so many other industries. I didn't just school in Hollywood. I lived in Hollywood. I lived in Burbank for a long time. And I rode with all those guys. My school is situated inside of Universal Studios. So I had access to backlots, to Desperate Housewives. And all. We even met with some of the people who acted in those things. And we became friends. I understand the pressure that comes with the job has a way of tilting so many ideas, so many things around you. Now, if you go through a proper orientation and you have a proper mentorship, what I think the industry should have is actually a mentorship program that every person who is coming in should go through that so that you are psychologically prepared for the industry you're coming into. If you're not psychologically prepared, the first step you take is probably going to land you in trouble. Somebody will tell you, oh, you need to come and sleep with me. No, when you go through that orientation, you will know that, look, I can't sleep with you. This is my talent I want to give for money.
Yeah.
I will not be able to sleep with you. And you can even report the person. And that director will be sanctioned. The industry does not condone this. People do it on their own, but that is what you hear outside there. That's not how we want to operate. I have produced movies, a bunch of movies, both in Nigeria and so many other places. I've never told anybody, you have to sleep with me before you can play in my movie. I now produce and act in my own movies.
What of the people that introduced them to you?
No, the people
before I can introduce you to you, you have to.
but that one is a totally different ballgame. That has happened in the US.
Maybe
really.
it's
Keske.
Yeah, no, but that doesn't make sense actually, and it happens. I know about 2 cases where someone had taken money, not to sleep with them, but they've taken money from people just for those people to meet me, my fans in the USA, from Cameroon and Sierra Leone and all that. And they later told me that this guy actually took money for us to be able to bring us to you to see you. And I was very mad at the guy, and I made him to refund those girls. And he did it. No,
it is called influence peddling.
No. I didn't like that. I didn't like that part because this person is close to me. He had told me that this people wanted. I say, let them come. I want to see them. I love my fans. I'm not. If I walk on the street, if you don't tell me, oh, Joseph, that's the guy. I usually don't know that I'm even an actor. I just walk on my own.
I wish the president would also be able to say that to you. Anyone who collects money before seeing the president should return the money. I really wish that would happen. And even for those who also peddle for
He's talking about president.
You have to ask me which. You have to ask me which president I'm talking about.
Oh, okay.
And
okay, sorry.
Anyway, don't forget that we have 37 governors in Nigeria.
Yeah.
The CBN governor is also a governor. So, just saying. Now, you are
president of PMAN.
Exactly. Now you are 50.
Yes.
And you are celebrating with a movie. It must be a very, very costly celebration. Tell us about the movie.
So I was telling Alero, the other time I came here when we were trying to do the abolition exercise was in 2018. 2018. She hosted me. They had me here. We brought a traditional ruler and everything. I remember the journey to abolishing that stuff in 2018. I say it to everybody. From January to December of my 2018 was dedicated to this activity. And we eventually did it in December of that year. And when we finally carried out that abolition, which was very spiritual and symbolic at the same time, I promised everyone that, just like I was talking about the industry, about psychological orientation, I said, no matter what we do today, however we abolish this thing, there will be a massive need for psychological orientation as well. Yeah. So that the people can get to understand and make personal decisions on their own that, this thing is actually not worth it. Okay? So, I brought this form because I wanted to read us something as we go to the movie. In 1956, on March 20, 1956, Igbo legislators in the Old Eastern Assembly abrogated Yosu practice, yeah? And when he was addressing them, Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe was addressing them on March 20. You know what he said? He described the Osuka system as devilish and uncharitable. And then he said it was wrong to brand any human being with a label of inferiority due to an accident of history. Now, the big
this
question...
was in 1956.
In 1956. In fact, they abrogated it and made the law that if you called anyone Osu, they will fine you. So we were supposed to evolve along this particular abrogation, but we evolved in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
So, but the question is, why did Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe say due to an accident of history? What was that accident of history?
Yes.
This was why I made a movie. This movie is a product of 10 years plus research. And I was careful to make sure that I carried everyone along. Dr. and Chief Peter Dochie today is one of the custodians of Igbo culture. So I first of all said, I am never going to tell anyone that I'm producing a movie until he had read the script and given a pass on it. So I sent the script to him. After about 1 week, he got back to me and he called my name and he said, congratulations, 5 times. He said in all his 15 years in this business, he had not seen anything so perfectly written and that everything lines up well. That was when I declared to everybody, I said, we are ready for the show. I began to call people, everybody.
And culturally,
we passed. That was it. So this movie is going to answer the question of what is the accident
of history
in that history. Because during that time, Osu caste system stemmed from transatlantic slavery. Why Nnamdi Azikiwe say accident was that these our people were the normal freeborn like you and I and so many of us today who ran into the shrine, the evil forest, to run away from the slave collaborators from being captured.
Oh.
And because those people were scared of our shrines back then, they knew that they couldn't go there to go and pick them up. They started carrying out a propaganda. They have become the properties of the gods. They are now the untouchables. They are now outcasts. That was where it came from. The real Osus were meant to live in the shrine that is located in the evil forest, and they were not meant to interact with anybody. They lived in the shrine, they died in the shrine, they fed in the shrine. Everything about them ended in the shrine. So the people you see outside are not supposed to be called Osu. That's why Dr. Nnamdi Azikiwe said accident of history. And we need to embrace this reality. That's what the movie is going to explain. Once you watch this movie in great details, you're going to see that accident of history, how it unfolded. Even a Yoruba guy, somebody watched it, one of the guys who does aggregation for us to Netflix. He watched it, I don't want to mention his name, but he watched the movie. He's a Yoruba guy. He said to me, he spoke so long, he said to me, Joe, I am a Yoruba person. I was looking at that Igbo area where you told the whole history of what happened. I understood it 100%, even as a Yoruba person. That was when I knew that God has helped us. We have actually done our job. So once this movie comes out and you watch it, you're going to find out where Osu came from. And that's when you're going to see that it is actually useless for us to continue to practice this into the 21st century.
With these few words of yours,
we are now convinced that Osu has been abolished. But what about in practice today in the East?
Okay, so thankfully, when we did that abolition exercise, because I was very sure what I was doing, that it was supposed to be a spiritual abolition. So when we did it, immediately after that exercise, there were about 60-something to 70 communities that never wanted to have the discussion. They said, don't talk about it. We don't want to hear it. If you talk about it, they are even ready to lynch you. Today, about almost all those communities now have accepted, not just that they accepted, they have carried out that abolition. So what we are now telling the chiefs is that as the abolition is taking place, let us also sensitize the people. Because once it's abolished, that thought that, oh, if I marry Osu, I am going to have misfortune, or this one will happen to me, that one will happen to me. Let's begin to show them that the same Osu you are refusing to marry in Igbo land, they are marrying Yorubas, and they are prospering. They marry Hausa, they prosper. They marry Edo, they prosper. Why is it that it's only you Igbo person that will marry Osu, and then you will not prosper?
You will not prosper.
I don't understand.
maybe because it's the property of the god.
Joseph Okechukwu. Well, director and what?
Producer. Actor, first of all.
But now, in connection with Osu.
Yes.
You are the...
Oh, I am the producer, the executive producer, and the producer, and I also acted. I played the lead in it as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's Joseph Okechukwu. And,
yes, Uzodimma Okpechi directed.
And Osu is going to be out pretty soon. It's not out yet, so keep your gunpowder dry. It's going to be out soon, and you can go and watch it, maybe in cinemas or whatever. But I'm sure we will get the details when that happens. Thank you very much for coming, Joseph.
You're welcome.
Happy 50th birthday, and we wish you all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
And that is our package for today. We'll be here again, him willing, next Saturday with a fresh edition. I'm Alero Edu saying, see you then.
And I'm Ayo Makide. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Bye for now.